Dear friends, welcome to another episode of Geopolitical and Military News. In this video, we will talk about several alerts separately issued by Russia, China, and North Korea about the imminent Third World War. But to what extent are these alerts real, and to what extent should we be concerned? On this Sunday, March 17th, during his victory speech in his fifth presidential race, Vladimir Putin stated that if NATO troops are sent to Ukraine, as French President Emmanuel Macron suggested, the world will be just one step away from the Third World War. This was the second time in less than a week that Putin referred to a new global conflict. In North Korea, last week, dictator Kim Jong-un stated for the third time in 2024 that the world is very close to a major and terrible conflict on a large scale. Also last week, China's Xi Jinping ordered his armed forces to prepare for a conflict that he said could be global and could start very soon. So why are leaders making such serious threats of global conflicts, and to what extent should we, mere mortals, be concerned? When we analyze the main conflicts and tensions in the world, we conclude that they result from attempts to reverse the current world order, notably the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Unlike what Putin claimed, the invasion wasn't to combat neo-Nazism, prevent what he calls NATO expansionism, or protect descendants of Russians living in Ukrainian territory for generations. Its sole purpose was to annex Ukrainian regions rich in industries and natural resources and, in the process, inaugurate what he called a multipolar new world order centered on Russia and China, with countries like Brazil, Venezuela, Iran, Syria, and North Korea orbiting around. In the case of tensions between China and Taiwan and between China and various countries bordering the South China Sea, the motive is also the same, with the Chinese trying to impose their absolute power and control in what they see as their strategic backyard. Just as it is inconceivable for Russia to have Belarus and Ukraine outside Moscow's sphere of influence, it is also inconceivable for China to have Taiwan and the South China Sea not directly controlled by Beijing. The only way for Putin's multipolar new world order to begin taking its first steps is, in the case of Russia, through the Ukrainian defeat and the total and complete assimilation of that country, turning it into a mere Russian protectorate. In the case of China, it involves the annexation of Taiwan and complete military control of the entire South China Sea. Until these two conditions are met, Putin's touted multipolar new world order is just an empty promise. That's why we see Russia so committed to the brutal and terrible invasion of Ukraine and China so intent on pressuring and antagonizing the Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan. It's clear that the creation of a new multipolar world order doesn't interest the current holders of power, represented by the United States and its main European partners, economic and military powers that don't want to see Russia and China as centers of power in the other half of the world. Whenever there is a serious threat of changing the status quo of the global geopolitical context, there is always the risk of a major conflict. This was the case, for example, when Kaiser Wilhelm II's Germany began to industrialize and arm itself, dreaming of one day being stronger and more powerful than the gigantic Royal Navy. At that time, England was the metropolis of the largest, vastest, and richest empire ever to emerge on our planet. And, of course, the German plans didn't please the English at all, with the French and Belgians, also major colonial powers at the time, also seeing Germany as a potential major competitor. The fear of seeing the status quo altered led to a rampant arms race in Europe in the early 20th century, with all that tension and all those armaments exploding because of a small spark generated in a regional incident in distant Sarajevo. This led to the terrible First World War, which left a horrible toll of 40 million dead and wounded. What we're experiencing today, in 2024, is somewhat similar to what the world experienced in 1913 and 1914. On one side, we have major economic and military powers trying to establish themselves as centers of power in a new world order, and on the other side, we have the current holders of power fighting precisely to prevent this. Just as it happened in the phase that preceded the First World War, now the world is also arming itself at a frenetic pace. In response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Europe and the United States are building more and more military factories and multiplying several times their capacities for arms production. All this tension and this gigantic quantity of armaments only need a spark to explode and turn into a new world conflict. So, yes, it's a real risk, and yes, we need to be very attentive to it. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now to support us, and leave your like. Until next time.